I was 23 when I took the seasonal fire lookout job deep in the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia. Back then, I thought isolation sounded peaceful. I had just gotten out of a rough breakup, dropped out of community college, and convinced myself that spending 6 months alone in the mountains would somehow fix everything. People online romanticize the Appalachians. They post pictures of fog rolling through endless forests and little wooden cabins hidden between ancient hills. What they don't tell you is how the mountains feel at night. The silence out there is wrong. Not empty, wrong. I arrived in late October. The roads became narrower the farther I drove into the mountains. By the time my GPS lost signal, I hadn't seen another car for almost an hour. Fog drifted across the road in slow waves, and the trees looked unnaturally tall, their bare branches reaching over the pavement like crooked fingers. The ranger station sat beside a rusted gate near the trailhead. A heavy-set older man named Walter met me outside. "You're the new lookout?" he asked. "Yeah." He nodded slowly like he already regretted hiring me. Walter handed me a ring of keys and pointed toward the mountain road. "Cabin's 8 miles up. Generator works most days. Radio's inside." "Most days," I joked. He didn't laugh. Before I left, he stopped me beside my truck. "One thing," he said quietly. "What's that?" "If you hear whistling after dark, don't whistle back." I stared at him for a second. Seriously, dead serious. By sunset, I wasn't laughing anymore. The fire lookout cabin stood at the top of a steep ridge surrounded by endless black forest. The structure itself was old but sturdy. Wooden walls, narrow windows, and a wraparound deck overlooking miles of trees. The view during daylight was incredible. At night, it became something else entirely. Darkness swallowed the mountains in layers. Fog filled the valleys below like smoke rising from invisible fires. And the woods never stopped moving. Branches creaked constantly. Leaves scraped across the roof. Sometimes it sounded like footsteps circling the cabin. My third night there, I heard the whistle. One long note echoed from somewhere below the ridge. Then another, closer. I stepped onto the porch with a flashlight. Nothing. Then a whistle sounded directly behind me. I spun around so fast I almost dropped the flashlight. Nobody stood there. The whistle had sounded perfectly human. I locked the cabin door immediately. The next morning, I radioed Walter. "Hey," I said carefully, "you ever hear weird whistles up here?" Static crackled. Then Walter answered. "You whistle back?" "No." "Good. That's it. You hear it again. Stay inside." The radio cut out. That night, the whistling returned. Only this time there were 2 different whistles. One from the valley, one near the cabin. Back and forth, like 2 people communicating in the dark. Then came footsteps on the porch. Slow, heavy, crunch, crunch, crunch. The footsteps stopped outside the front door. 3 gentle knocks followed. I grabbed the shotgun Walter had left above the fireplace. Then a low whistle came from the other side of the door, and it copied the exact tune I had been humming earlier that day. Every hair on my body stood up. I backed away silently. The footsteps eventually disappeared into the woods. The following afternoon, I drove back to the ranger station. "What the hell is out there?" I asked Walter. Walter looked exhausted. "People around here call them mimics." I laughed nervously. "You're serious?" "Hunters disappear up here every year." That night, a violent storm rolled across the mountains. Rain hammered the cabin roof. Around midnight, the power died. Then the radio turned on by itself. Static filled the room. Then a voice whispered through the speaker. My voice. "Help me." I nearly dropped the radio. "Please help me." It sounded exactly like me. Then another voice cut through the static. "Walter, don't answer it." The radio went dead. Outside, Whistles surrounded the cabin from every direction. I looked through the window and saw movement between the trees. Tall figures, too tall. One stepped into the moonlight. His body looked thin as branches. Its arms hung unnaturally long, and its face looked almost human. Almost. Then it smiled. The smile stretched far too wide. More figures emerged from the woods. Some crawled across the ground. Some stood motionless watching the cabin. Then one spoke using my voice. "Open the door." I locked myself inside the bathroom with the shotgun. The voices continued for hours. Sometimes they sounded like children laughing. Sometimes like people begging for help. At one point, I heard my mother crying outside. Then my ex-girlfriend. Then Walter. "Please let me in." Right before sunrise, everything stopped. Silence returned. When I finally stepped outside, muddy footprints covered the porch. Not human footprints. The toes were too long, and there were far too many of them. I packed my things immediately. Before leaving, I noticed something freshly carved into the wooden railing. We learn quick. I drove back down the mountain without stopping. But when I reached the ranger station, Walter was gone. The office stood empty. Then I heard Walter's voice whisper from the woods behind the station. "Help me." I left immediately. Later, the police told me Walter had been missing for 3 days before I even arrived at the mountain, which meant the man I met wasn't Walter. My grandfather grew up in eastern Kentucky near the Appalachian Mountains. Before he died, he told me something that stayed in my head for years. There are places in those mountains where people were never supposed to go. At the time, I thought he was just telling old mountain stories. I was wrong. In 2019, my cousin Eli invited me on a week-long hiking trip through a remote section of the Appalachians near Black Pine Ridge.
Eli lovet survival camping.
He watched all those wilderness shows and thought he could survive anywhere with a knife and a backpack. There were 4 of us total. Me,
Eli,
his friend Marcus, and Marcus's girlfriend, Jenna. We started hiking early on a cold November morning. The mountains looked beautiful during the day. Endless orange forests stretched across the hills beneath a pale gray sky. But locals in the nearby town acted strangely when we mentioned Black Pine Ridge. An older cashier at a gas station stared at us nervously. "You camping there?" she asked.
Yeah, Eli answered proudly.
The woman frowned. "Don't stay after dark." Marcus laughed. "Why? Bigfoot." The woman didn't smile. "You hear knocking in the woods. Don't knock back." Another weird mountain warning. Eli grinned as we left. People around here are superstitious. Maybe, but by the second night, none of us were laughing anymore. We camped beside a narrow creek deep in the forest. The trees around Black Pine Ridge looked ancient, thick trunks covered in dark moss that blocked out most of the sunlight. At night, the woods became pitch black. No moonlight reached the ground. No stars. Just darkness. Around midnight, I woke to a strange sound. Knocking. 3 slow taps. Tuk, tuk, tuk. I sat up inside the tent. The sound came from somewhere deeper in the woods. A minute later, another set of knocks answered from farther away. Tuk, tuk, tuk. Then another, and another. The knocks spread through the forest like signals. Marcus unzipped his tent. "You guys hear that?" he whispered. Nobody answered, because we were all listening. The knocking continued for almost 10 minutes. Then it stopped all at once. Silence returned. The next morning, Jenna wanted to leave. "I don't like this place," she admitted. Eli rolled his eyes. "It's probably hunters." "There were no gunshots," she said quietly. Marcus agreed. It sounded deliberate. Eli ignored us. He insisted we continue toward Black Pine Ridge. By late afternoon, the forest changed. The trees became thicker, older. Their bark looked almost black, and we stopped hearing birds entirely. No insects either, just wind. That's when we found the cabin. It sat hidden between the trees beside a steep hill. The structure looked abandoned for decades. Half the roof had collapsed. The windows were boarded shut. But the strangest part was the dozens of symbols carved into the wood around the front door. Circles, stick figures, strange antler-like shapes. Marcus stepped closer. Probably some old moonshine shack. Then Jenna noticed something. These carvings are fresh. She was right. The wood around several symbols still looked pale, like someone had carved them recently. Eli pushed the front door open. The smell inside nearly made me gag. Rot. Wet earth. Something metallic. Our flashlight beams revealed an empty room filled with broken furniture and dirt-covered floors. But in the center of the cabin sat a large hole, perfectly round, about 6 feet wide, descending straight into darkness. Marcus crouched beside it. How deep is that? He dropped a rock. We never heard it land. Then came the whisper, soft, barely audible, from inside the hole. Hello! We all froze. The voice sounded like a child. Jenna backed toward the door immediately. Nope. The whisper came again. Help me. Eli aimed his flashlight into the hole. The beam disappeared into endless darkness. Then something moved deep below. Pale shape. Fast. Too fast. The whisper changed. Now it sounded like Jenna. Please help me. Jenna started crying. That's my voice. The thing below laughed softly. We ran. Branches whipped against our faces as we sprinted through the forest. Nobody spoke until we reached camp. That night, the knocking returned. Closer than before. Tuk, tuk, tuk. Directly outside camp. Marcus grabbed a flashlight and pointed it toward the trees. Nothing stood there. Then another knock came from behind us. Tuk, tuk, tuk. The sounds surrounded us. And mixed between the knocking, we heard whispers, repeating our names. Eli, Marcus, Jenna, then mine. The voices came from every direction. Jenna started panicking. We need to leave now. Marcus nodded, but Eli hesitated. That hesitation nearly got him killed. A scream exploded through the forest. Not human, high-pitched and distorted. Something huge moved between the trees beyond our campfire. We saw only pieces of it. Long pale limbs, a stretched face, eyes reflecting orange firelight. Then came dozens of knocks all at once. Talk, 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 talk. The woods erupted with movement. Figures emerged from the darkness. Tall, thin, some crawling, some standing, all watching us. One stepped into the edge of the firelight. Its body looked almost human except for the arms hanging far below its knees. Its mouth stretched into an impossible grin. The skin looked gray like wet ash. Then it spoke using Marcus's voice. Stay. Marcus backed away in horror. Then every creature around us smiled at the same time. We ran blindly into the woods. I lost sight of everyone almost immediately. The forest became chaos. Branches snapping. Footsteps everywhere. Whispers surrounding me. At one point, I heard my grandfather's voice. Don't look behind you. I didn't. I kept running downhill until I saw headlights through the trees. A logging road. I stumbled onto the road just as a pickup truck approached. The driver slammed on the brakes. Please, I gasped. Help. The driver pulled me into the truck immediately. When I looked back toward the woods, I saw several pale figures standing silently between the trees watching us. The driver took me to the nearest town. Search teams went into the mountains the next morning. They found Marcus wandering alone near the creek, completely catatonic. Jenna and Eli were never found. Marcus spent months in psychiatric care afterward. He refused to speak about what happened. But one night, after visiting him at the hospital, he finally whispered something to me. "They live under the mountain." "What does?" Marcus stared at the dark window. "The things from the hollow." He looked terrified. "They learn us." Then he leaned closer. "And they follow." 3 weeks later, Marcus disappeared from the hospital. Security footage showed him walking calmly into the woods behind the building around 2 a.m. Smiling. The police never found him. Sometimes I still wake up at night hearing knocking outside my apartment window. 3 slow taps. Tuk, tuk, tuk. And once, during a thunderstorm, I heard Eli's voice whisper from the hallway outside my door. "Let us in." I grew up hearing stories about the Appalachian Mountains from my Uncle Ray. He lived alone in eastern Tennessee in a small cabin surrounded by thick forest and steep mountain ridges. Every summer when I was a kid, my parents would send me there for a few weeks while they worked. During the daytime, the mountains felt beautiful, peaceful even. But at night, everything changed. The woods outside Uncle Ray's cabin became a wall of pure blackness. You couldn't see more than a few feet past the porch light. And sometimes, late at night, strange lights would appear deep between the trees. Little glowing lanterns drifting silently through the darkness. The locals called them the hollow lanterns. According to Uncle Ray, people who followed the lights into the mountains were never seen again. Back then, I thought those stories were nonsense meant to scare children. Then, in October of 2022, I went back to visit Uncle Ray after nearly 15 years away. That trip changed my life forever. The mountains looked exactly the same. Fog hanging low between endless forests, old dirt roads twisting through valleys, small forgotten towns where everyone stared at strangers too long. Uncle Ray's cabin still sat near Dead Man's Gap, a remote mountain pass with almost no cell phone service. When I arrived, he looked older than I remembered. Thinner, more tired. But the first thing he said to me wasn't hello. "Did you drive after dark?" I shook my head. "Got here before sunset." He relaxed slightly. "Good." That night we sat on the porch drinking coffee while cold wind moved through the trees. Around midnight, I noticed lights far down the mountain. Tiny orange glows weaving slowly between the woods. "Gempers?" I asked. Uncle Ray's expression changed immediately. "No." The lights moved strangely, not bouncing like flashlights, floating, gliding smoothly through the darkness. "How many are there?" I whispered. Uncle Ray counted quietly. 7. Then he looked at me. "If they come closer, don't go outside." The lights stopped moving. Every single one turned toward the cabin. Even from miles away, I somehow knew they were facing us. A cold feeling settled into my stomach. Then one light disappeared. Then another, until only darkness remained. Uncle Ray locked every door and window after that. "You still believe those old stories?" I asked nervously. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stared toward the woods. "My brother followed those lights in 1987. I frowned. "You mean my dad?" "No." I had never heard about another brother. "Your father had an older brother named Daniel. What happened to him?" Ray's voice lowered. "He followed the lanterns. That night, something moved in the darkness outside the cabin. Then came a weak voice. 'Ray.' My blood froze. 'Ray, help me.' Uncle Ray shut his eyes tightly. 'That's Daniel,' he whispered. The voice came again. 'Please let me in.' I stood up instinctively. Ray grabbed my arm. 'That isn't him.' The footsteps dragged slowly around the cabin. 'Ray!' Scrape. 'Please!' Scrape. Then silence. Neither of us slept that night. The next morning, Ray finally told me the truth. "Daniel came back 3 days after following the lanterns," he said. "That's good, right?" "No." Ray's hands trembled. He came back wrong. Ray stared into his coffee. He stopped sleeping, stopped eating, said he could hear people whispering under the mountain. The room suddenly felt colder. One night, I found him standing outside staring into the woods. Ray swallowed hard. He was smiling. The next morning, Daniel disappeared forever. That afternoon, despite Ray's warnings, I hiked near Dead Man's Gap alone. The forest there felt wrong. Too quiet. No birds. No insects. Around sunset, I found a lantern symbol carved into a massive tree beside the trail. Underneath it were dozens of names scratched into the bark. Some old, some recent, and among them, Daniel Harper. Suddenly, I heard humming deeper in the woods. Low, soft, like several people singing together. Then I saw the first lantern, a tiny orange glow floating between the trees. Then another, and another. Soon there were at least 6 lights drifting silently through the forest. I should have run. Instead, I followed them. The lanterns led me into a narrow ravine hidden between steep hills. Fog covered the ground, and at the center stood several figures. Tall shapes wearing old dark clothing, each holding a glowing lantern. But something about them felt horribly wrong. Their movements looked stiff, jerky, like puppets trying to imitate humans. One slowly turned toward me. Its face was hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. Then it spoke using my mother's voice. "You shouldn't be here." I backed away immediately. More figures turned toward me. The humming stopped. One stepped forward. Its lantern illuminated its face. I nearly screamed. Its skin looked stretched tightly across its skull. Its mouth curled into a massive, unnatural smile, and its eyes looked completely black. Then every lantern suddenly went out. Darkness swallowed the ravine. That's when the whispers started. Hundreds of voices speaking at once. Some crying, some laughing, some begging for help. And mixed among them, I heard my own voice. "Stay with us." Something cold touched my shoulder. I ran. Branches tore across my face as I sprinted uphill. Behind me, the lanterns floated quickly through the woods. Getting closer, I burst out of the forest near the cabin just after dark. Uncle Ray was waiting on the porch holding a shotgun. "You saw them," he said. I nodded breathlessly. Ray looked terrified. "Then they'll come tonight."